East Idaho Newsmakers is brought to you by the Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.
This is East Idaho Newsmakers with Nate Eaton.
Thanks for joining us here on East Idaho Newsmakers. Today in our studio we have the president of Idaho State University, Arthur Vailas. He has been the president since 2006, recently announced his retirement. You've decided to move on, huh?
That's correct. My wife and I are looking forward to the next chapter of our journey. We've enjoyed our time here in Idaho, great memories, and of course we're going on to a new venture and looking forward to spending a lot more time with our families. And this is something that basically someday everybody's going to be looking forward to.
Let's start with the basics for those people who may not know who you are. I know that Idaho State University is a large university, at least for East Idaho. How did you end up here in Pocatello, and what was kind of your career path to becoming president?
Well, I've been in higher ed all my life. You know, once I received my PhD, mainly a scientist, and started my career at UCLA and ran a laboratory there, and also affiliated with the medical school there, and then went on and took a large directorship at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And from there, I went on and took a career not only as a scientist at the University of Houston, a chaired position in biology and biochemistry, but also a position as an associate vice president for academic affairs, and then got promoted to a vice chancellor and a vice president for research and economic development. So the latter was there, and presidency. I like this part of the country. I'm an outdoorsman. It's a great life and an upcoming institution with a strong emphasis in health professions. So I thought it was the right fit, so I applied for the job, and
here you are.
The rest of the story. Right?
How many students attended ISU when you started in 2006?
Annually, I think there were about 10,000 students.
And how about now?
Annually, you know, from, head count maybe 13, 14,000.
Okay, so there has been some growth over the years.
But we've also grown campuses.
Absolutely,
over the years.
Including in Idaho Falls and other parts of the state.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about the medical school. Coming to Pocatello, working with ISU, give us an update and maybe set the stage for those who haven't followed the story. Is a medical school coming to Pocatello? Will there be medical students coming to study and learn medicine?
There is already now a medical school coming on board with the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine. It's located in our Meridian campus, but it has a statewide and actually 5 regions mission. So it includes states like the Dakotas, Wyoming, Idaho, obviously, and so it's a regional medical school. Its home base is here in Idaho. A medical school includes medical students as well as residents and so forth, graduate medical education. So it focuses in sort of primary care, and of course it has a strong emphasis in rural medicine. And so a lot of the students will be all over the state, working with ISU, working with other universities as well as hospitals and clinics. Its residencies as well will work, people will work in rural Idaho as well as some of the metropolitan areas, but it'll also work with the other states in terms of residencies and hospitals and so forth. It's pretty extensive medical school.
Do you ever foresee Pocatello being a home base for that medical school?
It has a home base, the state of Idaho, and everybody's a part of it. So there is no home base. It's just that they get their training for a certain period of time in Meridian if they're a medical student, but then they have to do their preceptors and so forth throughout the whole state and other states. Graduate medical education's in Pocatello and also in Eastern Idaho, also Blackfoot, and so the clinical sites are all over, and that's all part of your training and education. So there really is no home base of a medical school per se.
There's a lot of talk these days about the cost of education. Higher, 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 and a lot of students are wondering how they're going to afford it. What's your view on that? How do you fix this problem, or at least keep it sustainable so that students can afford to get a higher education?
Well, the political environment for higher education throughout the country has changed, public higher education. And basically, the amount of public support in dollars has dropped significantly. So part of the offset of the cost is the drop in support of, taxpayer dollars for education. So in order to sustain yourself, you had to raise tuition to some degree, become more entrepreneurial, but you still have to keep up with the cost of other professions, so people will choose to be in higher education as a profession. So if you look at the sort of normalized costs, you'll find higher education a pretty good deal. The bad news is the burden of costs is more on the student than it was in the past. So we have to figure out a way to sort of equalize that, and we kind of hope that that environment changes so that as a profession that we're competitive and we still have high quality people, and at the same time not put a bigger burden on the students. So when you look at people's salaries as compared to other professions, if you look at their benefits, if you look at what it costs to deal with the accounting and all of the federal requirements and all of the other requirements, you'll find that the costs are very reasonable. So who is going to pay the difference? And so I think the American population is going to have to answer that question. What is the return on the investment of education for the future of the country? You'll find Idaho public education probably one of the most affordable areas than other states. So Idaho has done a very good job in terms of containing costs, becoming more efficient and effective. But how long can you keep that up if the dollars will continue to drop or will not change to keep up with the cost of living, as well as other requirements that are needed to be compliant in certain areas?
Would you say that that's the biggest challenge right now facing Idaho State University, or is there something else that keeps you up at night?
That is the biggest challenge of any university president, whether it's in Idaho or not.
Yeah.
So I always worry about the cost to the student, but more or less, how do we get more financial aid to students? I think financial aid and access to the universities, I think the universities have done a good job in increasing access, but the go-on rate in Idaho is low. So the financial environment for Idaho students is, I think, the #1 factor.
Earlier this year, I believe that you told the the legislative budget writers that you guys were experiencing a $12 million shortfall because of a loss in Middle Eastern students.
That's correct.
And the New York Times article last month, the Mideast came to Idaho State. It wasn't the best fit. What was your thought about that story when you read it? Was that accurate?
I will tell you unequivocally it was not accurate, very biased. We have a great relationship with the Middle Eastern students. We always have. Now, there's a subgroup of people that probably wanted to pay attention to whatever reasons, but the communities here in Pocatello and elsewhere are friendly. They love their students. They love the international students. The Middle Eastern students are most welcomed. And I think it was blown out of proportion over a few people that basically, I think the media sensationalized the situation out of proportion. And we enjoy a great relationship these last few years. We've always had from the beginning. And we have other students from other countries. And they really like their experience here in Eastern Idaho. So I really think that that was not the best journalism I've seen in my career.
Alrighty. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come right back with the president of Idaho State University, at least for how much longer? When are you officially done? One more year?
The 17th of June, 2018.
Next June. All right. Well, we'll be back with President Vailas here in a minute.
At the Bank of Commerce, we understand the hard work, determination, and sacrifice it takes to run a successful business. That's why we're here every step of the way to help make your dreams come true. The Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.
Thanks for being with us here today here on East Idaho Newsmakers. The president of Idaho State University is with us, Arthur Vailas. What would you say, you're going on 12 years now by the time you retire as president. What's the biggest thing you've learned?
The university is, in of its own, a very unique ecosystem. It has sort of a multitude of functions and responsibilities to the citizenship, far more than what you expect. You have a role to the legislature as far as the policymakers and how they sort of approach higher education. You have a role to all the communities that we serve. You have a national role with other states, other universities, an international role to make sure you have good relationships abroad to attract the different ideas to your university. You also have a role in the nurturing of students, and they come from many different walks of life. You have a far greater role in being entrepreneurial because of the economic profile of a university, and its constituents have all changed. And so you have a much greater in-reach, so to speak, to industry, economic development. You have a role in the people that live in these communities in terms of how do you enhance the quality of life. People expect you to do that. So these challenges face every president, but it really comes at a time in one's career where you have to be very entrepreneurial, also wise in terms of trying to accomplish these things when your resources are limited.
What's been the biggest obstacle that you have faced?
The biggest obstacle that I have faced had to do with the resources needed to execute the mission of the university. How to be, sort of think out of the box in order to complete your mission.
Earlier when you announced you were retiring this year, some people said it was because of the football program. There were so many losses and that boosters threatened to withhold funding. And then it came out, I think, 2 or 3 days later that when you officially announced it, but you had said that that really didn't affect the timing of your retirement. I think you called it ridiculous and irrelevant. And the quote that you told the Board of Education was that train was already on its road.
That's correct.
What would you say to those that think, well, no, it wasn't, you know, they forced him out within 3 days?
No, I actually like my Board of Education. They're a very unique group of people. They try to do the best job possible with the limitations that they have in financing and so forth. They come from the business world and higher ed, some of them, or other kind of businesses would deal with government. And they've been great, been very supportive. This is just something my wife and I decided it's time. We've been in higher education together for all our lives and really have not had much of a private life. And after all these years, we were looking forward to the time when we would like to do something different. We have 2 grandchildren that we rarely see. We've got a lot of family that we rarely see and do. And of course, we're interested in some other things too, in addition to always supporting education. So this journey is great, and we were looking at this a number of years ago, and just looking at the right time at the right situation, and this is perfect.
Do you think you'll stay here in Idaho?
No, we own a home in Sedona, Arizona.
Where it's warm.
And we also own a second home, a small home, sort of a little cottage in New Hampshire, where we're both from the East Coast. So we get to see both families at certain times of the year, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Choose the times you go to those spots.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, none of these things really affected why I wanted to retire. It's just that I wanted to retire.
You sometimes hear in certain circles that higher education, a lot of universities are very liberal slanted, that professors are, very liberal, and I'm not saying this about Idaho State University, I haven't heard this, but overall, working in the industry and witnessing this, do you think that there is a bias that, some professors, some universities really aren't as fair as they should be?
I've been in this profession all my life, been a professor most of my life. I don't think there's anything, I don't believe there's anything that really says you're liberal or conservative. Remember, we're in the knowledge business. So you can view knowledge any way you wish. Our job is to acquire knowledge, and acquire knowledge that's existing as well as new knowledge, and to take all that knowledge and to sort of create an environment to pass on to others of a variety of points of view. Now, of course, as one may emphasize one point of view over the other, but our dedication is to knowledge. That's the highest ground that you want to have, and that's who we are. So you could get labeled liberal, you can get labeled conservative. Sometimes when you're labeled conservative and years later, they think you're liberal. So I don't think it really has to do with politics. It just has to do with the way knowledge is acquired and disseminated. It really does not really have a political platform. Sometimes we need to challenge knowledge. That's part of our job. So the challenge itself may appear to be of a political nature, but it really is there to create sort of opinions and thoughts, and encourage someone to dig deeper into a particular topic. We call that research. So I don't really believe that we're either going to be liberal or conservative. I think we're just going to continue to find knowledge, just sort of like the news. Is the news liberal or conservative? You're after the news.
Go to our Facebook page, and some will. You'll
Some
see
will,
them
yeah,
both, right?
yeah, right.
Professors.
Right. We're no different.
How do you attract more students to ISU?
I think there are a number of ways, and I'm only going to focus with Idaho. One is you have to sort of continue marketing what your product really is. We are a university that basically is more in alignment with economic development. So who we train and who who we actually educate really is going to be ready for the workforce at all levels. And then we give examples of how that happens. We put a lot of emphasis in the advising, in the retention efforts of students to continue their education. We dole out a lot of financial aid in addition to with the federal government because, finances are important. We give examples of career advising to students so they know that up front, and we're able to market that. Of course, marketing and communications is always key, and we're always making continuous improvements, a greater use of the social media that's available to understand the institution, and our branding. And of course, we have unique programs like the Career Path Internship programs. This is bringing the private sector as well as higher education into the relevancy of their education very early on. A freshman could be a CPI student. This is something that Idaho State created, and it's now a national program in very different sorts. So, what is the value of your education? We focus on that. This is what you'll get at ISU, and this is how relevant it is for your future. That message has to be clear. And we have plenty of examples of that. We're in fields of health professions. We're in fields of energy. We're in fields of ongoing technology. We have a fantastic base in the arts and social sciences, great facilities. So all of this is attractive to students. And of course, word of mouth always helps, that they have a good experience. We're affordable than most universities. We also have an excellent safe environment, a nurturing environment, and we're fortunate here in Eastern Idaho that it's sort of a family kind of environment. Students feel safe, they feel needed, wanted, they're comfortable, and they're getting a world-class education in one of the most beautiful areas of America.
What will you miss when you leave?
I will miss the people of Idaho. I love them, they're great. I loved working with the legislators, having access to them, the governor. It's like a small world that's accessible to. I like the relationships with the private sector. The national lab relationships are just wonderful. And of course, I love the outdoors. And Idaho is really at the top, and so I'll miss those things.
You can do a lot more in the Idaho in the winter here than in Arizona.
That's correct, and we're not that far away, so
not.
I'll be coming back to Idaho here and there.
You're not. Well, President Vailas, we appreciate you coming in, and we wish you well. Of course, President Vailas is not retiring until June, so there's a few more months. He's been the president of Idaho State University since 2006, and the search is underway right now for a new president. Any idea when that'll be announced?
According to the State Board of Education's timeline, it would be March, April.
Okay, next spring. All righty. Well, we wish you well, and we thank you for joining us here on East Idaho Newsmakers. Thank you for watching. Have a good week.
East Idaho Newsmakers is brought to you by the Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.